Welcome to Chapter 3 on outdoor living space. In previous chapters, items such as walls, openings, dimensions, as well as structural components such as floor systems and roofs have been covered off. Those are important aspects to have into play when doing an outdoor living space because we need to see how the things such as decks and patio spaces are going to complement the existing design of the house. On screen right now is a model of where this is going to go when all things have been completed and designed within the plan. At this stage, this shaded image reflects where we've been in the previous two chapters, and so as we return to the main floor plan of this drawing, you will see at this stage that we have basically an outline of just our walls. And if I were to auto dimension this, this is basically all of the dimensions that have been placed on the drawing to this stage. We're going to be placing a deck off of the back left-hand corner here and this back right-hand corner of the drawing. And so, in essence, taking the dimensions off right now is just really to clear or make things a little more less cluttered as we're designing. When we begin to design the decks and put them together, we're going to be using a lot of default options. So just to take you through where those are going to be stored, if you go in through File and any of System Options, Project Options, or Drawing Options, you'll have the ability to go in and control the default deck dimensions either from a system level, which is to say all new projects and drawings that are created are going to reference to that as they're beginning life. The project options, which will control inside a given project, such as our outdoor living space, we'll be able to have our dimensions set up for each of the floor plans in reference back to the project level, or the drawing options, which controls it from an individual drawing level. If I click on drawing options to take a look at this and scroll down the list of options that are here, under material dimensions and deck options, you'll be able to see the structural dimensions that are being used. So the first one that we might gravitate to is what are the joist depths and spacings. So in this case, our joist will be drawn as 2x10s at 16 inches on center. And then our decking, which will go in with a 5.5 inch width and basically a 1.25 inch depth. The gap spacing will be 1/4 inch, and then the overhang on each of the edges will be 3/4. And you could modify all that. And again, if you do it at the drawing level, it's going to impact this drawing only. If you do it at the system level, all new drawings and projects as they're started would then adhere to those dimension changes. Other options that can be changed and modified would be the default bench building dimensions, if you will, and even things like what type of leg is going to be used, what the dimension and distances are going to be on that. When I come back to the drawing and I select Draw followed by Deck, what you will see here is we have a host of deck commands that can be used for laying your decks out. The first one in the list is deck, and literally it allows you to draw the joist, the decking surface, as well as the rim joist all the way around. So you basically would click this command, trace the perimeter of the deck, and all of that information is going to be laid out. It's going to show in your 3D, your elevations, your bill of materials. The deck components command is going to allow you to go in and basically control which of those items you're drawing. So you can draw 1, 2, or all 3 of them. And if all 3 are selected, it's the same as if you had selected draw deck, and you would basically sketch the surface in of each of the components. Moving down this list, we've got single joists and sister joists, and that allows you to have greater fundamental control over where individual joists are placed. So if you need to beef up some of the engineering, you might draw single joists and add some intermediate joists where you think you need them for the engineering of the deck. The sister joist would allow you to click on an existing joist that's already been placed and have a copy of it placed right beside it or sistered up to it, hence the name, so that you basically got 2 joists running side by side to reinforce an area of the deck. Parting boards will allow you to add them through the deck, in a custom format. Curved parting boards as well as on the deck edge itself. The deck bench, which we talked about, we will allow you to sketch those in, and then we get to kind of some of the structural components, such as the beams that will support the joists and where you want those placed, and even the posts will then support those beams. So, and we'll lay all of those out today as well. Deck stairs are going to allow you to go in and either pick from the library or manually sketch different types or shapes of the deck stairs, everything from straight to wrap around and what you see there listed in between. Same thing for railings and auto rail. The railing will allow you to pick a definition and manually sketch that in, and then modify the rail for types of posts and intermediate posts and the spindles and patterns and all of that. And the auto rail would allow you to actually click it and then select an existing deck and allow SoftPlan to go in and analyze the perimeter of the deck and then basically place a railing all the way around. The framed opening, you have both the rectangle and the polygon, and basically the rectangle allows you to go in and sketch a four-sided hole into the deck. We will double up the joists around that hole for you, and so on. And then the polygon would allow you to go in and freeform sketch the hole that you want to put in the deck. And in that case, then you would be responsible for the layout of the joist because of the odd shape that you may have sketched. And so this is where, going back to your single joist or sister joist, you may wind up having to manually sketch some framing in. The last item that's here is the level command, and the level command allows you to go in and basically earmark different decks for different structural components, whether that be elevations and where they're going to sit as far as their offsets are concerned, or whether that has to do with different types of structural components, say 2x8 joists versus 2x10 joists. So you would earmark the different joists by their level number for what you want to do with them. So that you can have them at different offsets and different structural joists and so on. Okay, to get started then with drawing, we're actually going to come in through the deck tool command here, and with my F11 snap feature on, you'll see that I get the marker letting me know that I found the inside corner of the wall. And in this case now I'm just simply sketching where I want my deck to go. And so this is again very much like sketching almost an interior wall. You're able to just kind of free-form sketch where you want this polygon to go, and then once you have done that, SoftPlan will go in and it will lay out that joist for you, and then using those default structural dimensions that we just looked at, in this case I would expect as I edit this joist that I'm going to have 2x10 joists at 16 inches on center, my decking on top, or what the dimensions are for that, even the gap and so on. All of that's going to be called out right down to what finish is going to be used on this deck, so that when I do a bill of materials I'll be able to get that calculation there on the drawing. Now you'll also notice as I'm looking at this that each edge of the deck actually has what we call a reference circle. That reference circle allows an edge of a deck to actually snap to a component such as a wall or a beam on a drawing, and make sure that things are accurately aligned. So in the case where it's hollow, such as these two reference circles, it means there was no wall for it to snap to, so therefore the deck edge is left exactly where I traced it, where in this case here, as long as I was within a tolerance of that wall, it snapped to it and automatically ran that along that edge for me. Okay, so going from here, I'm going to go in and edit some of the dimensions on here. So I'll come in through dimension and item extension, and I'm just going to come in and pull some item extensions off of the deck, and I can also pull some single extensions, so that once I've done that and I've got all of my extensions here, I can now come in and run my dimensions across where I want my dimensions to be placed. And so you can see here, we'll pull another extension off of here and a dimension like so. And I'll just run a cleanup, and that gets my dimensions, in play, and my extension lines, cleaned up to where the dimension lines are. If I right click and select edit on this dimension, I can now key in. I want this to be, basically projecting up from the wall about 2 foot 6 inches. And so it goes from that wall to that edge of the joist and moves it, accordingly. And so again, now I'm working around the dimension. I might key in, let's say 9 feet and the down arrow key. And so just continuing on with this process, we're going to make this one 2 feet down. And notice when I edit that dimension, it modifies this one over here. So they're just working in concert with one another. And so again, I'll edit this dimension 12 feet to the left, leaving me 6 foot 6 inches left over here. And so that, in essence gets our joists, and our decking set up. Now I can change where the joist reference edge is, because right now, if I were to right click and edit this edge, you would see that currently that joist is referenced here and then running 16 inches on center and kind of from this edge right here, so therefore it goes in that direction as well. I could move it over to here by simply editing that deck edge and changing the reference edge like so. So now I know my joist is starting here and running 16 inches right to left from the wall to the outside. Now, carrying on with this, and if we were to come in and we're going to break this shaded option out into its own vertical tab group so we can see there's our deck that we're working with, and then over here on the main floor plan, this is our deck as we work with it. So I want to come in maybe as part of the design and just chamfer these corners. And so using the tools option and selecting chamfer, I'm just going to come in and we'll start with this wall, this edge of the deck here. I'll click on it and then click, and when I do that, it pulls this dimension up. Now I can key that in to be whatever I want that chamfer to be, so I fully control that. And so when I do that and I click OK, over here inside the 3D shaded model, we can see what that chamfer is going to look like. And so I can do the same thing now with this corner here. I'm just going to, inside the floor plan, select Tools and Chamfer. I'm going to click, and then it adds that 2 foot chamfer there. And so just like so, now I could come in once again if I needed to, and using the dimension and item extension, I could then pull dimensions off of this, and because it went in at a 45-degree angle, that's the 2 feet is matching all the way around. Now inside this next step is I'm going to do this from within the 3D. Is I'm just going to come in and maybe add some parting boards around the perimeter of the drawing. And so let's just say we select draw and we select deck, and we're going to select parting board and then deck edge. And I'm doing this inside 3D, and so I'm just basically clicking on the on the edge of the deck where I want the beam to or the parting board to be placed, and you can see that as I do that, it's adding the parting board all the way around. And so it's just a simple click on each edge and to have it added in there, and we can see it over here in the 2D plan. So using some of these same lessons, we're going to add a secondary deck over here on the back right side edge of our back of our house. And so what we will do at this stage is zooming this up inside the 2D, we'll select draw, followed by deck, and again we're just going to pick the deck option, and we're just going to click to get ourselves started. And in this case now I'm just basically tracing the perimeter of where I want my deck to go. And once again we see the deck inside the 3D and we see it over here in the 2D. Now in this case I will just using move and adjust item, I'm going to select this reference circle and drag it to the wall, so that in this case here, at least on 3 of the 4 sides of the deck, I have it referencing to the edge of the wall where I want it to be. Once I have done this, I will then be able to come in and I'm going to pull my dimensions as well, like I did earlier. So I'll pick my item extension. I'm just going to pull my dimensions off, and then I'll draw a single extension here, and then just using the dimension command, which was just hitting the shortcut key of letter D, I can then edit these dimensions I've just added. So I've just D to draw the dimension, and then right click and edit in order to modify where they're going to be. Once this has been set, I'm now going to come in and chamfer my corners here. So using tools and selecting the chamfer command, I could do once again the same 2-foot dimension that I want on there. And so now with that set, I'll pull this dimension out, and using the item extension, I can run my dimensions just to make sure I've got exactly what I want, and do the same thing here. So I'll just draw an extension line off of here, and so on. And so now we have our dimensions for our plan pulled out. Like we did over here, we might add a parting board, so I could select draw, deck, and I just want to pick the deck edge. Okay, and so in this case, I'm just clicking on my deck edge where I want the parting board to be. Notice it's just get close and click, get close and then click until you've added it all the way around, and you see it drawing over here. Now, in the case of the deck as we have it right now, you'll notice that my decking is actually running at a 45-degree angle. When I did the chamfer, the reference circle was moved to the shorter of the two distances here, and so right now, as I edit that, that's actually the reference edge for the actual deck itself, and so or for the boards, and so they're running off of there. I'm actually going to break this deck so that we have decking running in two different directions on this actual plan. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to just go into the to the actual plan itself, and I'm going to explode it. And when I do that, you'll see that I get my decking ring joists and joists all broken down into individual pieces. And it doesn't change how the deck looks per se inside 3D. It's just giving me a little more control over here on what we're going to do. And so I'm just going to, to begin with, I can now come in through draw and deck, and I'm going to select parting board and select instead of the deck edge parting board, to draw it on the drawing. And I'm going to select the F11 function key just simply to snap this, and we're going to draw it in. So just simply selecting the parting board and getting close, I'm going to run my cursor all the way across and run a cleanup at this stage. And you'll see the parting board coming through. Now the decking is one big polygon on here at this stage. So if I item erase that out, you'll see at this stage all I see right now are my joists and my parting boards. And so I'm going to select deck and deck components, and this time I'm simply going to draw only the surface in. And so when I do that, I'm just basically inside the floor plan selecting the draw, deck, surface, and I'm just going to sketch this in where I want it to go. And so using the decking as a basic guide and just turning my F11 function key off, you'll see I actually get my decks down here, and if I zoom that up, and I'll just run my cleanup. Okay, there's my deck surface with the trim running all the way around, or the parting board. And so again, using the same command, okay, I'm just going to trace my deck surface in at this stage where I want it to go, and so we'll just trace this all the way around. And again, the F12 function key to turn my lock off. And once I've traced that all the way in, I will run a cleanup. And so what you see right now is you've got decking kind of running in two different directions. So what we want to do is I'm going to edit this edge over here for deck surface, and I'm going to make it the reference edge, and so it's now running vertically, but I'm going to change that to 45 and click OK. And I'm going to do the same thing over here. I'm going to edit this surface edge, and I'm going to change this to 135 and click OK, and I'm just going to run my cleanup. And so now what we have is we have decking surface running in two different directions. We've got our parting boards in place, okay, and even in the case of the parting board, we can actually even adjust this if we wanted it to be at different directions or dimensions. So I can set it anywhere that I want. And so that gets our two decks laid out using this one tracing it in because everything was just easily conformed, and this one I got a little more custom in changing the deck surfaces, and so tracing the surface in as two different polygons. And so again, in this case over here, I'm just going to edit, let's say, this edge here and make it the deck surface edge so that it's running vertical and no longer horizontal or at an angle like it just was. And so there's our two decks. Now, alternatively, with a deck that has been drawn in as a complete unit as opposed to sketching in individual parts, using the miscellaneous and explode option and clicking on the surface multiple times will also break it down, so saving you have to from drawing it in as individual pieces. The deck itself, in a similar way, can then be edited, selecting the deck surface, using the edit edge, making this the reference side, and then allowing you to go in and add the surface angle with which the decking is added. So multiple ways that you can create the exact same thing, whether you want to sketch it in using individual pieces or using the explode command to break the surface down into multiple pieces and then editing them. Now, with the decks in place, the next thing we maybe want to do is actually add the beams and the structural components to hold this in place. And so let's go back to our first deck that we drew. And if I come in through Draw and Deck and I were to select the beam option, and we get these, and these are completely user customizable. You'll see that we've got a host in there at this stage, but I'm just going to select the 2x10 pressure treated, and I'm basically going to zoom my cursor in where I want the beam to be placed, and I'm going to run this across left to right between the two rim joists. And if I were to go into 3D shaded and I were to zoom this up, okay, we would see there is our beam that I just sketched in there. And so we could do the same thing in the floor plan. I'll just right click, draw, select, okay, and I'm going to zoom this up, and I'm going to place a beam in here running across like so to support those joists. And so we now have a similar beam running left to right there. Now, sticking with this, we're just going to be hopping back and forth between the two decks, but what I'd like to do at this stage now is I'd like to place a series of beams in, or posts underneath the beam to support it. And so what I'm going to do is under Deck and selecting Post, I'm going to go down to the structural, and here I could select, let's say, the 6x6 pressure treated post. Now, if I zoom this up and I turn my F11 snap feature on, okay, I can make sure that I can, get it directly or centered underneath the beam. And so I've got one there, and I'm going to, zoom in, and I'm going to draw another one, exactly where I want it to be, and click to place it in. And we'll take a look inside the 3D, and we've got, a couple of them there, and we're going to place a couple more in just a second when we get, maybe modify or edit these ones here that we've got. And so what you'll see right now is if I were to edit this post, currently right now the post is 12 feet in height. Okay, it's got a pad depth of 4 feet, and it insets into the pad 4 feet, and so on. So those are all of my dimensions that I'm working with right now. And so what I'm going to do is, and it's got an offset right now of only 4 feet into the site. So I'm going to offset this down 8 feet, okay, which is basically burying that into the actual site plan itself. And then on the post, I'm just going to adjust its height to fit the beam. And when I do that, it adjusts the height automatically. So here I can right click and repeat edit that same change, to there. Now, this is too great a span, so we're going to need to put a couple of more posts in there. And I could certainly dimension these into place and so on, but here's what I'm going to do. Under miscellaneous and divide segments, this command allows me to actually draw between two areas or two points, and then I can modify how many segments I want to set up. So in this case, if I change this to, let's say, 3, and I click OK, what it's going to do is there was the first post, and my second point was this post, and then in between I broke it up into 3 equal segments, and it means it dropped in a couple of construction points for me. And those construction points are going to be used to place my next set of posts, and they're going to be equally spaced. So now I could select I'm going to right click on this post and just click the draw select, and with the snap feature on, I'm going to click and draw in a couple of other posts over here. So it's a quick way of getting that done, and with the equally spacing going on there using the divide segments, and then on top of that the draw select. So let's do the same thing over here. We're going to draw a post in here. Okay, so we will set one up that's going to center to that part of the beam, and then we'll also set one up here, where we want it to be placed. And then lastly, because this is a shorter span, the snap feature will allow us to actually see it centered. And so I'm going to go to my front elevation, and we don't have the sight turned on, but here are our beams, here are our posts, and as I edit these and take a look at them, okay, so just right click, edit on the post. So these are our dimensions, and then this is we're offset down, but here's our actual individual pad heights, which we could change as well if we wanted to, but we're going down 4 feet with that right now. Okay, so that's basically getting those laid out for us on the actual drawing itself. Let's come back to the main floor plan and let's take a look at it. I'm going to move the 3D back to the previous tab group, which will allow it to be seen a little bit better. And so this is what our currently our project is going to look like at this stage. Now we can obviously add other posts in over here and here as we begin to lay that out, and that's going to be nothing more than just right click, selecting our posts, and then we can just as I say, begin adding those in and to the inside of our rim joists and so on. So I'll just pick this for a draw select, and I can either leave the snap on, or I can just eyeball that in where I want that to be inside the actual joist itself, and then move it. And then once I've got one done, I could then actually come in and just copy this. So just right click on the post itself is probably the easiest, because anytime that I try to, when there's multiple items in on the drawing and you try to copy them, it's oftentimes you can see there it picks the parting board, whereas if you right click, you can then from the selection set menu pick where it is that you or what the object is that you're trying to copy and get it set into place like so. And so I won't spend a lot of time doing all of this, but as you can see now, these could just simply be edited and adjusted. So as far as these were fitting to the underside of the beam, then I can also come in and just edit and change the height of these, and we could actually instead of the adjust height to fit to beam, we could just simply modify these to run them up if you're just fastening them to the outside of the or the joist to the outside of the beam itself. And so this sets something like that up, and we could do this a similar step over here if necessary. Okay, and so the last things that we're going to cover off would just be a quick review of adding something in like a deck bench for right now, and then in time we may take it out or customize it or change it. But we'll come in through deck, and as we select the deck bench option, you can actually sketch right inside the 3D model where you want it to go, span the length, and then click or the direction you want it to run. Right clicking will actually stop the drawing, if you will, process, and you can see that we've added a deck bench in here, in this case up against the house. So that's just a matter of selecting deck, selecting that you want to draw the deck bench, and then positioning your cursor where you want it to go and tracing it in. The other part of the or important part of SoftPlan is the bill of materials that we've been calculating. And so now that we have begun to get to a point where we've actually been drawing, you can see down here in the exterior structures, we're actually going to begin to get the information calling off as we draw it and as we calculate it. And you'll be able to come in here and select any of these items, and you could then edit them and see where they are on the drawing as well. So if I were to right click here, I could say highlight entities on the main floor plan, and at this stage it's going to highlight those entities on my plan for me. Okay, and so that's what that is going to do for you there. And so as I take a look at this, back inside the bill of materials, okay, you've got plenty of items here. All the quantities, costs, markups, and labors can all be, modified and looked after by you. That concludes where we're going today with the plan as it stands. And so to date, so far, we've been able to lay out the decks as well as the structural components on this. We've modified the decks and the different spacings, and we've added information such as the trim, or parting boards around the outside. In Chapter 4, we'll be taking a look at adding stairs and railings to these decks and all the modifications that go in with that. And so with that said, we're signing off until next time.